Hi again everyone, welcome to the last video in our E6B series. I'm going to show you how to use the wind side of the E6B. Once we get into block 7 of AVIT 102, we'll wrap it all up in one big video on cross-country planning, so we'll apply what we have learned in block 6 with the E6B. We'll apply that to an actual cross-country planning scenario in block 7. So as you can see on the E6B, we are now on the wind side, or the back side of the E6B. The nice thing about this is that if you ever forget how to do this, it will tell you right at the top here how to determine your ground speed and true heading. So as a reminder, your ground speed is your speed in relation to the ground below you, whereas your airspeed, your true airspeed, is the speed of the air in relation to the aircraft moving through it. Your heading, so your true heading is in a relation to true north versus your true course. So the heading would be the direction your nose is pointing. The course is the direction that you're actually traveling. So heading and course would be the same if there was zero wind, which we know is almost never true. So if there's any type of wind, your heading will be slightly different than your course. So in our examples that we're going to use, we are first going to determine our ground speed and heading, which is a common thing you will do for your flight planning. And then I'll also show you how to do this backwards, which you can actually use this to determine the winds aloft during flight, to make perhaps some corrections to your planning if you need to. So whenever we try to determine our ground speed and heading, we first need to reset the wind side of the E6B. So my suggestion is to slide the E6B so that the grommet or center is aligned with the number 100. So this right here is the grommet. It's that circle. So right now that is centered on the number 100. But instead of considering that number to be 100, for now we will consider that number to be 0. So hopefully that'll make more sense in a moment here. Next thing we have to do is we have to align our wind direction under the true index. So the true index is labeled at the top here, so we have to spin, we can call this the B scale if you want, we can call this the B scale and this the A scale. So we have to spin the B scale to align the wind direction on the B scale with the true index. So in our first example, we have a wind loft of 240 at 15 knots. So we'll spin the E6B so that 240 is under the true index, so our wind direction is now under the true index, and we had a speed of 15 knots. So what we're going to do here is we are going to find the number 15. Remember we said the number 100 we are going to call the number 0 right now. So the number 110, we're going to call that the number 10. The number 120 we'll call it the number 120. 130 we'll call that the number 30, etc. So if we're looking for the number 15, the number 15 would be right here between the 10 and the 20. So you can make a mark using a pencil. Pencil works pretty well on the backside of the E6B here. And now our next step is, if we look at the instructions, to set the true course and the true index. So our true course is 150 degrees. So in relation to true north, we are tracking a true direction of 150 degrees. And then we are going to slide our E6B so that the dot that we have made is now lined up with our true airspeed. So now these numbers, the 100, 110, 120, 130, now those actually represent those values. So 120 knots, we will slide the we don't want to spin, we want to slide the E6B so that that red dot that we've just made is now on the line that represents the true airspeed. So true airspeed is 120, and we have that dot on that line. So now if we look under the grommet, which is that center point, that will tell us what our ground speed is. So it looks to be about, I'd say about 117 knots ground speed. And the dot is set to an angle. So this line here represents 5 degrees. You can see that here. This line here represents 10 degrees. So each line here represents 1 degree. So this is 6 degrees, 7 degrees. So it looks like about 7 degrees wind correction angle. Now whenever that dot is on the right side, like it is, then that is a positive value. So that's an addition of 7 degrees to your course. If it's on the left side, then it would be a negative value. So if our true course is 150, our heading, we would add 7 degrees to our true course, so our true heading would be 157. And again, our ground speed is right here, about 117 knots. Okay, we'll try another example. So let's reset the E6B back to 0. First thing we need to do is determine the wind direction, which is 190. So we'll set 190 under the true index. The speed is 30 knots in this example, so we'll put a dot right there. Well, right about there on the number 130. Now we need to set our true course under the true index, so our true course is 180, which is right about there, not that much different. And we will slide our dot that we made up to our true airspeed of 150 in this example. So now we'll read our ground speed once we set it there. Now we can read our ground speed under the grommet. Looks to be about 121 knots. And our wind correction angle looks to be about, so this line's 2 degrees, so about plus 2 degrees. So if our true course was 180, then our true heading would be 182. Like I said, we can also go backwards with the E6B if in flight you wanted to determine what the actual winds aloft were. So we could set the known information that we have. So let's say that our true course is 220 and our true heading is 210. So therefore we have a wind correction angle of -10. And our ground speed is 120, and we have a true airspeed of 140. So we can set our E6B so the grommet's on the ground speed of 120 right there. Our true airspeed we said was 140, so we'll make a dot along the line for 140, and it was also -10 degree wind correction angle. So because our true course was 220, we can set that up under the true index there. And we said that our true heading is 210, so that's a -10 degree correction. So for a true airspeed of 140, we'll put it on this line, these two lines right here. Here, let's do that a better way. There we go. Easier to see. So now that dot is placed on our true airspeed line of 140. Oop, that's not a straight line. This line here represents 140, and this line here represents a -10 degree wind correction angle. Now for us to determine our winds aloft, very simple. All you have to do is spin the E6B so that dot is aligned with 0 degrees as such, and slide the E6B so that our grommet is aligned with 100 or 0. So now we can tell our winds aloft. If we look at the true index, the winds aloft looks to be about 166 degrees, 166 degrees, and the velocity is 30 knots. It's right on the number 30 there. So winds aloft in this case 166 at 30. Again, if ever in doubt, look at the top of the E6B. It'll tell you how to do it, at least to determine your ground speed and true heading. If you wanted to determine the winds aloft, basically you just take these instructions and read them backwards, and you could determine the winds aloft that way. So in our next video, we'll do some cross-country planning using some cross-sectional chart using a plotter, and we'll also use the E6B to come up with some more realistic scenarios, some scenarios that actually have some context to them. And hopefully this will make a lot more sense once we apply the knowledge that we've gained so far.